Bridget, you can still hear me, right?
Yep, sounds good. Sounds good. Looks
Awesome.
good.
Awesome. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Tech Tuesday. My name is Vanessa, and I am a communication specialist with ITS. Today I have Bridget McFadden with me, as always, another communication specialist, and she's going to be helping me out today with co-hosting duties. So we have a big crowd today, which is great. And if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. At the bottom of your Zoom window, there is a button that says chat. It's a little speech bubble. If you click on that, you'll be able to open a chat window and just type in, any questions you might have during the presentation. And I'll try to get to some during the presentation, especially if Bridget sees one that's very relevant to what I might be discussing at that point in time. Otherwise we'll have a little bit of Q&A at the end. And I'll try to get through everybody's questions. And if there's any pending, then we'll just, answer them all through email after the session. The session is being recorded. So after everything is over, I'll be putting the video online, and everybody should get it by tomorrow with some helpful links via email. So without further ado, let us talk about animation in PowerPoint. So what is animation in PowerPoint? Basically, in a nutshell, all it is you use the animation tools to add movement or sound to your presentation. And I'm not necessarily suggesting you do it in the manner to the left, but you actually could if you really wanted to. So that's basically the power of the animation tool in PowerPoint. So when should you use animation? I'm going to be not only showing you kind of how to do it, but giving you some tips on the do's and don'ts, because animation can get a little crazy sometimes in presentations, and we definitely don't want it to distract from what your content is. So we're just going to be going through a little bit of that before I get into the actual demo. So again, when are we going to use animation? We want to use it if we're going to emphasize a point. Certainly, you can have content on a slide, and it can be very compelling, but sometimes animation just gives that little tiny edge to really drive the message home and make people remember what it is that you're trying to say. Another time you might want to use animation is to illustrate a dynamic process. So if you've used PowerPoint quite a bit, you'll know that there's stuff called smart art and there's charts that you can add to your slides. But if there's like a process or a hierarchy or anything else that kind of implies movement in your graphic, you can actually animate those so that you can kind of illustrate a flow on the screen, and it makes it a little more memorable. Another reason that you can use animation is to pace the delivery of the information, which is actually what I'm doing right now. I've been using animation on this slide to kind of go bullet by bullet instead of kind of like throwing them all on the slide and having them all there for you to read before I get to those topics, while I'm talking. I mean, that's fine too, but if I'm just using animation to kind of go point by point, you're not really overwhelmed by all the text on the screen or distracted by it. I don't want you to be reading stuff on the slide without listening to what I'm saying. So animation can actually do a great job of kind of you giving out information as needed while you're speaking, so people are really listening to you. And the last reason you might want to use animation is just to help the audience focus. Some presentations can be a little lengthy, and it's really hard sometimes to ask an audience to sit there for like half hour, 45 minutes, 1 hour, and not have kind of compelling content the entire time. And there's lots of different ways to engage an audience in a presentation. I can't go through all those today. But sometimes you can use animation on the screen just to kind of move their eyes along with what you're talking about. And that kind of snaps the audience back into focus, so they can hear what you're saying and take that message home with them. So again, I'm going to be going through some do's and don'ts. And I realized that by going through the do's and don'ts, I'm going to be breaking some of my own rules just to illustrate what you shouldn't do. I'm very well aware of that. But hopefully by illustrating it, it'll show you why you should and shouldn't do something in PowerPoint. So let's go through the do's first. These are the golden rules, the gold standard. You get a star if you do these things, the do's. So the most important thing about animation is to keep it simple. When we get to the demo, you're gonna see that there's at least like, I don't know, like 3 dozen like animations that are available for you to use. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. I'll probably repeat that a couple of times in this presentation. You really just want to keep things very simple, and remember that your message is the most important part of the presentation. It's very enticing to sometimes use animation when you get the hang of it, but you want to just enhance your presentation and not distract from the content that you're presenting. Otherwise, the presentation is pointless. And you're going to see that when we look at the different types of animations that are available, there are subcategories of them. Some are called basic, some are called subtle, and then some are called like fun, exciting. Try to keep it on the more subtle side, and maybe just choose 1 or 2 animations, to use your presentation throughout, so it's not, a little too busy. Again, what I was just saying, keep animations consistent. Just because you have access to 30 different animation options, please don't use them all in one presentation. Just use a couple. Think of it like fonts. Like in a presentation, you wouldn't use like 30 different fonts. That would be kind of crazy. It works the same with animation. Just choose a couple that are really nice, maybe a little professional looking, and just kind of play around with those and see what your presentation looks like. Also, make it easy to present. So we're going to be talking a lot about timing and when an animation shows up on a click, if it's automated and things like that. If you're building a slide deck for yourself, you're going to know when the animations appear, and that's fine. But a lot of times people are building slide decks for other people, and you don't want them to have to click through 20 animations that they're not familiar with, especially if the person presenting is not necessarily a guru with PowerPoint. They just kind of click a spacebar or a mouse, and that's what they've been used to. So really, if you're making a PowerPoint presentation for somebody else, make sure that person is comfortable using animations before you even start adding them. And if they're kind of good with the idea of using animations, there's ways to automate some of them so that they don't have to click multiple times in a presentation and kind of get frustrated with it. And I'll be going through some of those today. And then last thing, do realize that good animation takes time. Depending on what you're doing, adding animation to a slide deck can be kind of time consuming, especially if it's your first time using it. Make sure you give yourself some time to add the animation, and don't make it a last minute thing, because what ends up happening is if you kind of cram animation in there and you don't test it at all, and then you present, you kind of run into issues, and it gets to be a frustrating experience, not just for the presenter, but for the people who are actually watching the presentation. So definitely, make some time for it is all I'm saying, especially if you're new to it. There's a lot of trial and error, and it can be frustrating when you're first starting to use it, but it ends up getting a lot of fun once you get the hang of it. At least I hope that's what you think. So here's an example of a slide that I did a couple of years ago, actually, about the Epic Together initiative, which was just converting all of the EMR systems at Weill Cornell and NYP to just all be Epic. And our CIO actually approached me one day and said, "Hi, I'm supposed to talk about Epic Together, and I need to do it on one slide. Can you do that?" So I said, okay, and then tried not to hyperventilate in front of him. But so the idea we came up with, instead of just kind of slamming a bunch of text on a screen, was we wanted to visually represent it by kind of showing through animation what the vision of Epic Together was. So this was the first part of the slide. Again, this is all on one slide using animation. And it shows all the Weill Cornell clinical sites across New York City that were using Epic at that time. And then the next part of the animation is showing the clinical sites and the NYP sites, but demonstrating that all of them are using different EMR systems. You've got Allscripts, Meditech, Athena. It was kind of a mess, and we all wanted to be under one system. And then the next part is the vision of Epic together, the future of Epic, all of them convert into Epic. So I felt that was a better way to illustrate what the point of the project was, rather than just to have one slide crammed full of text. So these are the kinds of things that we'll be doing today. All right, animation don'ts. Again, these are things that I'm very well aware you shouldn't do, and I demonstrated them, but please don't do these. If there's anything that you take away today, this part of the presentation is the most important, all right? So you have to be aware of your timing when you make animations. You don't want them to be too slow, and what I mean by that is, so that's a good speed to show something, but if you're trying to show a process and this happens, it's incredibly frustrating for the people watching your presentation. If things are too slow, unless there's a really compelling reason, to have something appear very slowly on your screen, don't do it. Usually keep your animations to maybe 1 second in between each one, maybe even half a second. That half a second might be a little fast depending on what you're doing, but those two tend to be kind of the ideal speeds for animations. And then don't use fun animations with no purpose. Again, you're gonna see when you get to your animation options that there's a category called fun and exciting. But sometimes it's just like not worth it. So that's kind of a normal, subtle animation. So is this. But if your last step is just bounces across the screen, for no reason, like there's literally no reason I had to do that. It's very confusing for the audience. So again, subtlety is kind of key for most presentations. And you kind of can go a lot further with the subtle animations than the fun ones. And don't use inconsistent animations. What I mean by that is, so I've got an animation for step 1 that kind of wipes on the screen. Then I got this crazy wheel, and then I got the spinny thing. That's a little exhausting to do for multiple slides to sit through. So you just kind of keep it consistent. Again, 1 to 2 animations throughout your presentation. And if you're doing something like this, where it's like a step-by-step process, just use 1 animation throughout, 1 animation style, so that it looks, good and it's subtle and it's not distracting from your point. And then don't animate against the flow. What I mean by that is, so again, using the same smart art, I've got step 1 here. And this is a downward process, remember. But if I start animating up for some reason, like it's not the worst mistake you could make when doing animation, but it doesn't make a lot of sense to like animate things flowing up when you're trying to emphasize like a downward process. And the same would work if you were doing a process flowing to the right or the left. So there are ways when you add animation to your project that you can, change where the animation originates from and how it flows. So again, keep that in mind when you're making your own presentations. And this is perhaps the worst offense that you could ever do. Again, if you take away one thing from today's presentation, don't do the next thing. Please don't ever do this. Don't ever animate every letter on your slide. Again, just because you can't doesn't mean you should. I have actually seen this in the wild. There was a presentation I saw where on every slide, the header was this, like, it was like a typewriter kind of animation where each letter is like across the screen. And she added like a sound of a typewriter that's like tick, 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 and this was a long presentation. And I was kind of like, oh my God, like internally, please, I just felt like I was going crazy. It was a really long presentation and you just kept hearing that clack, 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 clack. It's very terrible. Please, if you're gonna animate your text, which I'll go through today, just do it all at once. There's an option to animate every letter or every word. Try not to do those ever, unless there's a really, really good reason. Like, I don't know, you're doing a slide deck for a murder mystery. Maybe then, but not any other reason. All right, I am going to start with the demo, but before I go ahead, Bridget, are there any questions that people might have before I get into this?
Hi. I'm laughing out loud at those letters. Yeah, John Wagner has a couple questions.
Okay.
He's wondering what are the common reasons animations or movies do not work in presentations? Um,
Ah, okay. I can go through that. I'll go through it during the demo as well, but sometimes they don't work because you're not, sometimes it's really a simple reason. You're not in slideshow mode. The other reason is the timing wasn't set up properly or wasn't practiced well enough. So like, you might think that an animation was going to show when you clicked on the screen, but then you didn't set that up correctly or somebody didn't set it up correctly for you. There's so many reasons, John, that it could not work. But hopefully when I go through the actual demonstration of how an animation is created, that might help answer some of those questions, only because there's so many reasons. So anything else, Bridget?
he has one more question. Is there an advantage to animation over just showing sequential slides that build out a story?
I mean, really at the end of the day, um, it's kind of up to you what you want to do in your preference. I am using a lot of animation in the slide deck for obvious reasons. I'm teaching it. But even I use animation like not too much. I really just use it to make a point, and you can definitely tell a sequential story through slides. But again, sometimes if you have like a much longer presentation, sometimes it helps to have a little movement on the screen just so people their eyes can focus on what you're doing. So really, I mean, again, this isn't a presentation to tell you you should use animation or shouldn't, but to kind of give you ideas about what you can do and what might be helpful to make your presentations more compelling. I hope that helps answer your question.
Awesome. And then we've got one more, but you might cover it in the demo. So I
Sure.
say go for the demo and then we can maybe do more questions after.
Okay, sure. So I am going to get out of slide deck mode so that I can actually show you how the animations work. Before I start, I just want to point out I am creating these animations using PowerPoint for Mac on the desktop. The toolbar up at the top, it looks almost the same on Windows. So you'll find all the same options that are available. They might just look slightly different, but it's all the same. However, if you're using PowerPoint on O365, which is the web version, when you log in to look at your webmail, there is an option to use PowerPoint online. It does work the same way, but it's not as robust. Like, so there aren't quite as many animation options, and it's not quite, it doesn't work quite the same as if you're using a desktop version. So if I were to recommend anything today, also it would be to try to use a desktop version if you really want to add animations to your slides. It just works a little easier. Okay, so I'm going to go through two types of animations today. One is the animation tab, and then the one at the end I'm going to go through very quickly is transitions. So animations are movement on the actual slide, and transitions are going to be animations between the slides. Okay, so let's start here. So animation, so anything that you can animate on a slide is called an object, and you can animate text, images, and shapes. All right, and to add animation, all you have to do is you click on any object on your screen, and you are going to go to the animation tab, which is right here. All right, so you're going to see a few options. You're going to see these green options, these yellow options, and then there's a red option called exit effects. So green is all the entry effects. So that's anything that animates an object where it just appears on a screen. Then you've got these yellow ones, which are for emphasis, and that just animates stuff that's already on the screen, but just makes it more prominent to people who are viewing the presentation. And then exit effects, the red animations, are just how you get an object to leave or disappear from your screen. So we're going to be going through all of those today. All right. So I have this first object clicked. What I want to do for this animation, I have it set up, these little objects, and I just kind of want them to appear in sequential order. So 1, 2, 3. All right. So I'm going to click the first one, and I'm going to go into my entry ones, my entry options, these green ones. And like I was saying before, there are subcategories. There's basic, subtle, moderate, exciting. All right, so I tend to stick to the first two options. And today I'm going to do a zoom out. for this first animation, all right?
Martha, I'm so sorry to interrupt. Is there, a couple of people have messaged me. Do you see the Zoom screen sharing thing on your?
Oh yes, I do.
Yes, okay. It's just blocking the tabs for some people.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I
I'm
think
gonna
that's
show it like
care of
this.
it.
Sorry guys, because I'm showing my Zoom screen, you can see all the stuff here. So I will try to keep it down here so you can see. Actually, if I do this, will it get rid of that? No, it's not gonna do that. All right. All right. Okay. So we'll just keep it right there and hopefully that works. So again, animation tab is right here, okay? So I've got this first one that I've animated. I picked a zoom out feature. I'm gonna do the arrow next. And what I want to do with the arrow, because it's directional, I'm gonna have it wipe. Right now it's wiping from bottom up, but I can change that. And then the other one, I'm gonna have it consistent with this first animation that I did, and I'll also do a zoom out, okay? And you'll notice something. Because I added animation, two things happened. One is that every object that I animated got a number. And that's just showing me the order that things are going to be animated on the screen. Second was an animation pane popped up on the right-hand side. So it's showing me all of the objects on my screen that currently have animation, all right? And from this animation pane, I can make some kind of customizations to make it look exactly how I want. One other thing to note is if for some reason I accidentally closed out of the animation pane, there's a button right here for it, okay? So you can always get it back, so no worries there. So I want to change some things about my animation. So to do that, you have to click on one of the items that you want to change. So I've got the first one, which is the circle here, concept 1, and I've got some options right here. Effect options, timing, and text animations. So effect options, because I used a zoom feature, it zooms out. There are certain properties that have to do with that specific animation that I can change. So I can, decide how I want it to zoom from, if I want it to zoom from the center of the actual object or from the slide, like the center of the slide. Right now, I'm okay with it just being the center of the object. After the animation appears, I can decide whether it dims and kind of goes away or not. And I can also add sound to each one. There are some preloaded sounds that you can add, or you can actually add some that you want with other sound. I rarely, if ever, use sound in PowerPoint presentations just because, again, it can be distracting. So I'm not going to do that today. And then we've got timing, which is what I mentioned before. Let me close this one. So timing is really, really important. It's one of the most important things in animation. Timing decides when the animation appears. So I can have it appear when I click my spacebar or mouse, or I can automate it by having it show up with the animation before it or after the previous animation. And then I can decide how quickly or slowly it appears on the screen. Again, when I was talking about having animations appear slowly, this is what I was talking about, the duration. And I can also, if I automate something, have a delay of when it appears on the screen. So let's play around with this a little bit. So I've got this animation, it's showing up pretty quickly. I've got this one, and they should all appear on a click. So how you can test this out is there's a preview button right here that'll show you what it looks like. And that's helpful. But so one of the best ways to do it is actually to do it in slideshow mode. So I'm gonna play from the current slide. All right. And I have all of these appearing on a click, which means tapping my space bar or the mouse. So every time I click, the animation appears. It seems to work fine, great. But what if I wanted to automate it so that this one, this circle here, concept 2, shows up with this arrow for some reason, and I don't have to click 3 times. So let's do that, all right? So I've got this arrow here. I'm gonna look at that. I did mention before that it wiped up, but it's an arrow that's going to the right, so I can actually change the origin of that. So again, under effect options, I've got the arrow selected, and I can change the property from wiping from bottom up to from the left. So it goes from left to right. And if I preview it really quick, you'll see that little subtle change where it's now going this way. All right. So I changed this first part. Let me change the second part. All right. So again, I want this circle here to automatically show up when this one animates. All right. So I'm clicking concept 2, and under timing, I'm going to do with previous, which means Now, you'll see a number 2 here instead of a number 3. These are kind of being treated as one object now. These are going to appear together. So now, when I go to slideshow mode, all right, I'm going to tap my spacebar once, twice, and you'll see instead of tapping 3 times, these two came together in one animation because I automated this one, okay? All right. Other things that you'll notice about the animation pane is that you can also change the order of how things animate on the screen. So let's say I wanted, for some reason, for concept 2 to be the first thing that's animated. All I'd have to do is click on it and then use this up arrow and change the order of it around. You'll notice, though, that it's kind of changing now the order of animation too, 0, 1, 2. So if I did preview, it's just kind of weird. And, you know, I'm only showing this to demonstrate how you can move them around. But so that's how it would work. And now it's back to its animation that I set beforehand. You also can just delete animation. Like if you kind of built something that's not making sense and you just kind of want to start from scratch, you can hover over any object in the animation pane and just hit delete or this little X and it goes away. All right. And then you can just reanimate it as you see fit. All right. So that's very, very, very basic animation. Just have something appear on the screen and time it so that, you know, it works out to however you want to present it. All right. Let's do number 2. Oh, one thing that I should also note is you'll notice that because I animated this slide, there's a little star now in the kind of slide deck on the left-hand side. This little star next to a slide shows that a slide does have animation attached to it. So, you know, when you're reviewing your slides and you want to make sure that you did animate something, this is a good indicator that you did. So now we're going to animate some text, and we're going to use the emphasize the options, the yellow ones right here. So I have a quote here from The Office. Would I rather be feared or loved? Easy both. I want people to be afraid of how much they love me. And so what I want to do for this slide actually is this part of the presentation, I want to emphasize because this is the punchline. It's the best part of it. So I'm going to try to use these emphasis ones. The emphasis ones are pretty cool and good to use for text because you can do things like underline parts of a process and things like that. So in this case, I want the font color to change. And I'm going to expand this so you can see all the options. Again, you've got basic, subtle options, moderate, and exciting. I'm going to stick up here again, and I'm going to do font color. All right, so that's kind of what it's going to look like when I present. And you'll see that I've got my animation here in the animation pane. So under Effect Options, you'll see under Property, because I'm changing the color, I can actually change it to whatever I want here. I'm going to go for the orange. It's actually a nice contrast. But you can add more colors if you want to and access like the entire color wheel in PowerPoint and do anything you want. And again, I can decide whether I want the animation to go away after it appears or hide on the next mouse click. Generally, you want your animations to stay on the screen for the most part. There may be situations where you have them exit, which I'll show in just a bit. But for the most part, if you're going to animate something, it makes sense to keep it on screen. Again, we'll always have timing options. And we have text now, text animations, because I am animating text. This is the section that I told you about where you can animate everything all at once, by word or by letter. Please don't do these two if you don't have to, please. Usually if you're going to animate text, it's really just in everyone's best interest if you do all at once, which is the default. So, and again, you can, if you've got like bullet points, you can actually decide how to animate, you know, an entire slide. If you want to animate things, paragraphs by first level bullets, by second level, I mean, there's a lot of different things you can do. So in this case, I just want this one to be animated. It is, and if I preview it, that's what it's going to look like when I click. It's always best to view things in slideshow mode to test that things show up when you click or are automated, because the preview just shows you what it's going to look like, but not how it's going to work with your mouse or automated. All right. So that's how you use the emphasis animations. let's go into making objects disappear and morph. So basically that slide I showed you before for Epic Together, where all of the sites kind of magically turn into Epic, all I did was this trick and I multiplied it by like 20, okay? This is how you kind of get things to appear on the screen and then disappear. So you'll be using the exit effects for this one, all right? So I kind of want to do a slide showing how technology has changed from this brick of a Nokia, which I'm sure many of you had, I had it as well, to the latest iPhone, all right? So this requires moving things in advance on the screen so it looks more like it's morphing. You'll want them on top of each other at some point. So I'm gonna take my first object, which is the Nokia, all right? I'm gonna put it in the center of the slide, and I'm gonna do an entry effect. I am going to, I think I'm gonna have it fade in. Here's fade, all right? And then what I want to do is have this disappear, and at the same time it's disappearing, have this phone, the new iPhone, appear as well. So it kind of looks like it transitions really smoothly from one device to the other, all right? Okay, so now I have to add a second animation to this one, all right? I added an entry one, which is the little green star. I want to add an exit one now. So I'm gonna go here under exit effects, making sure this is still selected. And I'm also gonna do a fade. It's gonna fade out though. So now you'll see there's two animations, all right? One is for the entry and one is for the exit for the same object, okay? Gonna take my new phone here, put it right on top, okay? And I'm gonna have this fade in as well. Here's the tricky part. I need this one to appear when this one exits, all right? So here's where that timing comes in. So picture number 5, that's the iPhone. Oops, going into timing, all right? So right now I have it set up so you could see it, where everything appears and disappears on a click. I don't feel like that's, you know, as good of an animation as I can make it. So I want this to appear again with previous. So these are tied together. They're both number 2 now, all right? So again, now if I go into slideshow mode, I click once, I've got the old phone. And now when I click again, as it disappears, the new iPhone appears in its place. So this is a really cool tool that you can use when you just want things to morph or disappear and reappear on screen. I've actually used it multiple times during this presentation. Within the second slide when I was going through the points and all those GIFs and images were changing on top of each other. And then again, the Epic slide, that's how I did it. It can be really effective in terms of just using one slide to make a point, but changing things on the screen so that your focus goes to where it needs to. Let's move on to smart art, okay? So if you use PowerPoint again, you've probably used smart art before. I've got a really simple one on the screen, step 1, step 2, step 3. And I want to animate this process going from left to right. So if I click on it right now and I try to animate it, I'm going to again do wipe, and I want it to wipe from left to right. So if I preview it, great. There's one thing that I don't like about this though, which is if I play it for you guys right now, it kind of goes through everything all at once. And I would like to, in my presentation, go step by step and not have it all appear all at once. So the way I do that, and you can do this with any smart art essentially, anytime you animate smart art, this special little subcategory shows up in your animation options, and you've got smart art animation. So you've got a few options. You can animate it all as one object, all at once, and one by one. As one object and all at once, they sound like they're the same thing, but they're actually not. So all at once means everything is treated as one giant, or rather, as one object, everything is treated as one big entity. Everything is animated together. All at once means, even though they're gonna be animated at the same time, PowerPoint's gonna recognize these as 3 different pieces, okay? So if I choose that option, and then do it in slideshow mode, so you could see instead of wiping all the way across as one big object, each one showed up individually. they just all appeared at the same time, okay? But generally, what makes a bigger impact is doing one by one. So if I am presenting and I kind of want to explain each step, I could say, okay, well, for step 1, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. And then we move on to step 2, which includes A, B, C. And then we've got step 3, which includes blah, blah, blah. So I think that's a better way to pace the content if you're using SmartArt. And again, you can use SmartArt, you can animate SmartArt in multiple ways depending on the type of SmartArt that you're using. But one thing that is really important to note is when you're using SmartArt, you're going to animate every piece of it unless you ungroup the object. So what do I mean by that? Let's say I only wanted to animate, let me get rid of this actually. Let's say I only wanted to animate step 3 for some reason, but you'll see that every time I click on it, it's connected to the rest of the SmartArt, okay? The way that you can separate pieces of SmartArt together so that you can individually customize each piece is to go and click on the SmartArt and then go to Format, all right? And then you'll see a little button here that says Group. So right now, all the SmartArt is grouped together. And if I ungroup it, now step 3, let me go back to step 3. Oh, hold on. I think it's grouped with something else still. There we go. So now step 3 is entirely independent of the rest of the SmartArt, and I can just focus on animating this one piece. Like maybe I wanted to emphasize it for some reason, just step 3. That's how I could do it. And you can also just regroup things by clicking them all together. On a Mac, you're hitting Shift, and on Windows, you're hitting Control in order to click everything. And then again, you'd go back to Format or right-click even, and then group everything together until they're one object, all right? This grouping and ungrouping is important for the next one, which is path animation. So I had this interesting graphic of a funnel, and I had 3 objects. I had to ungroup it first in order to animate these pieces individually. So path animation is really, really cool. I've used it a few times, but I don't have many reasons to do it a lot. But path animation allows you to create like a customized path for the animation to follow across your screen. So it's this button right here. And you can do like a predetermined path. You could do like a loop or like a circle, turns, a spiral, or you could draw your own freeform, all right? So what I want to do in this animation is I want each of these like little, I guess like lottery balls they look like, to go into the funnel, all right? Like 1, 2, 3, to make my very important point. So I'm gonna hit Path Animation, Draw Freeform, and with number 1 selected, all right, I am going to take my cursor, which has become a crosshair, and draw it 1 into here. And then when I'm done drawing, I'm gonna double click. Whoop! And it shows me my animation. Pretty cool, right? So that's my first path, all right? And all I have to do is do the same thing to each of them. Do freeform. Again, you draw it. I'm gonna put it right about here so it doesn't block number 1. And when you're done, double click, path is done, gives you a preview. And number 3. I'll put it right here. That one's kind of a funky one. I didn't draw it quite as smooth, but that's okay. All right. So then when we preview it, it should be 1, 2, 3, which is, I think it's kind of cool. And again, timing works the same. You can decide whether you want 1, 2, and 3 to show up automated or when you click the options. And it works the same way for all animation. All animation includes timing, which is also available up here, by the way, on your ribbon taskbar. Okay? And then the last basic one I'm going to show you is transitions. So transitions, again, are animations between the slides. And what do I mean by that? So we've been working in the animation tab. Let's work in the transition tab. So right now, if I switch from this slide, let me go through it real quickly. All right, we're about to move on to the next slide. All it does is just appears, right, on the screen. But if I want to add a transition, maybe it appears on the screen like that. that's how it appears on the screen. There's like a little subtle kind of animation that shows up. And, you know, it kind of works nicely. Like if you add them to your slides and it's a very, very subtle transition, it does look quite professional and really nice. I wouldn't recommend things like, again, they have crazy ones like a checkerboard or origami. Maybe not that one. But transitions can work very nicely in a presentation, you know, if you go through it and, you know, take the time to add them. Although when it comes to transitions, if you want to add the same transition to all of your slides, you can actually do apply to all. You don't have to add it individually. As long as you want the same animation, which is what I recommend, just hit that apply to all, and it adds it to every single slide in your deck. So that was animation, kind of in a nutshell. Bridget, are there questions that people have?
Just a couple. Path animation is super cool. I've never seen that. Yeah, okay, let me scroll up through here. We've got a couple about videos. So the first question is, how do I save an animated slide as a GIF, MOV, or MP4 file? I seem to be
okay, good question. So you can go to File, Save As. Oh wait, no, not there, sorry. My bad, ignore that. So you actually have to go to File, Export, sorry. And you can actually change any of the options here to, GIF is usually the best way that you can save something, maybe a slide in particular, as a quick animation. In order to make things a movie, I believe that's still under Save As. Let's see. I don't recall exactly. I know that you can, but I don't recall exactly where it is in there. So let me get back to the person. We have the transcript saved, so I might go back.
Yeah, I'll take a note of this too, Ritwik, and we'll respond to you. And then one more question. Oh, from Daniel Margolis, is there a way to specify in a motion path where something will end up? Like say if I want to match another object's location, I have found it's a lot of trial and error.
Oh, like you want them maybe 1 and 2 to end up in the same spot? Or is that, just to make sure I'm understanding it correctly?
Yes.
Yeah, so with motion paths, it is a lot of trial and error. I will say that. The nice thing about motion paths is that it does kind of show an endpoint. So if you're doing freeform, you can do your best to draw it and like have it end in the same position. So again, you can see these little endpoints of where it is. It might be a little easier for, let me go back to animations. Let me go here. So for some of the predetermined ones, well, it kind of just did it for me. It's a little, let me pull it. So it's a little easier to see both the starting point and the end point for the predetermined ones. So you might have an easier time if you do that instead of freeform to kind of match up where everything starts and ends. If you have multiple objects on the screen and you need them to land in certain places. But yeah, other than that, it can be a challenge. I will be honest.
Awesome. He says, got it, thanks, great. The next question is, is there a way to embed a video file from the internet as opposed to just having the link on your slide and clicking it?
To embed a video, you have to have the video file. And yeah, that, hold on one second. Yeah, for a video file, insert video. You usually have to have like the MP4 somewhere in order to embed it. I have, try not to use a huge file, but whatever, we'll just take that one. And it's gonna take some time because it's a big file, but it's gonna embed it in the PowerPoint to actually play. Again, you can't really embed one in a browser because, you know, if for some reason the file doesn't exist anymore, it's gonna disappear from your slide deck entirely. So really, if you're looking to embed video, you know, you have to have the video file. Although that will really increase the size of your entire presentation file. So if you're going to do that, just make sure you have a place to maybe post it like on Box or OneDrive. So if you need to share with other people, you can actually like do it instead of having to try to email them a giant file and you can't get it through. So.
Cool, thank you.
Any other questions or?
I'm not seeing any more yet, but we'll give it another minute.
Yeah. So yeah, if there's anything else that you want me to show or anything like that, just let me know. But again, I mean, there are a lot of different things you can do in animation. I didn't even get through all of them. You know, you can also animate charts similarly to how you would do smart art. Instead of the smart art special animation option that you saw there at the bottom, you would get one that's a chart, and you can actually animate by series. You know, if you have like a cool line graph, it looks like, you know, the line is like kind of growing across the screen and things like that. There's literally so much you could do. And really it's just knowing these basics that I went through today and that I recorded, so you can go back and see it anytime. But it's really knowing the basics so you can kind of build them on top of each other, and then kind of create something really cool for your own presentations. If there are no more questions.
Oh, there's one more.
Oh, yeah.
How do we use countdown timer in PowerPoint?
Oh, use countdown timer. Well, that's not really part of the animation, but I think it's under slideshow. I think it's here under, I'm gonna have to go back because it's been a while since I've used a timer. So let me get back to that person.
Okay.
And I'll write to them.
I'll take down your name, but yeah, slightly different.
Yeah, it's a little different than what we're doing today, and I haven't used it in a while. So if you'll give me a chance to go through it again, I will have those answers for you to whoever asked that after the session.
Great.
All right, well, we are at time. So I hope that this kind of helped you understand how animation works in PowerPoint, and that you give it a try the next time that you do your presentations. And again, I'll be sending out some tips after this by tomorrow via email. So if you registered, you'll definitely be getting it because I have your email on file. But other than that, thank you for joining me today. Bridget, thanks for being a great co-host as always, and have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, Vanessa. Thanks, everybody.